Hello, everybody. Welcome. This is Marisol Cortez from Deceleration, and we are excited to talk today to Liberty Heise, who is she's a writer, she's an educator, she is a citizen scientist, and she's a runner. And she's going to be participating in one leg of the Monarch Ultra, which is a marathon that starts in Ontario, Canada, I believe, and goes all the way down to southern Mexico, or I think central Mexico, basically tracing the path of the monarchs as they migrate across Turtle Island. And so we were really intrigued and excited when we learned that there was a local runner who was going to be participating in one leg of that journey, and we have her here today to talk to us about some of her background and what draws her to the run, and how folks can get involved in that. Liberty, thank you for talking to us today.
Yes, thank you. I'm really excited to be on your podcast.
For sure. Well, I wanted to start just by asking you to tell us a little bit about your background. So what do you do that made you decide to participate in this marathon?
Well, so I'm originally from Washington State, and I grew up in Eastern Washington, and I grew up really off the grid. So we spent most of our childhood. I have three other siblings. We spent most of our childhood outside, and so anything that I can do that is outside is where I prefer to be. This run specifically, for me, could really connect to huge things. One is awareness of the dwindling nature that we have around us, and the other part is running. And I love running so much because it's sort of a cathartic event that I take part in almost every day. That really helps me stay grounded in being outside and being connected physically with the natural world. So,
And then you also you're a teacher as well, right?
I don't teach anymore. I am an instructional coach, so I help teachers improve their classroom instruction, and I help lead a school on the east side of San Antonio at Stewart Elementary right now.
Yeah, because I think you had mentioned something, or maybe Moby had mentioned that you're working on a pollinator garden with your students.
Yeah, so last year we started a pollinator garden at Stewart, and fourth grade students helped me. And what we did is we got a lot of seeds and pollinator plants from Drake White, who works on the Nectar Bar up in Hardburger Park, gave us a bunch of pollinator plants. And so we put in those plants and worked to really establish some pollinators there. And, of course, last year was awesome because of all the rain. The hackberry trees were in full bloom, and so we had a ton of snot-nosed butterflies that came through. So,
yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, it was a really great opportunity for kids to get involved in that. So
yeah,
that's
very cool. And which how did you hear about this marathon? How did you decide you were going to do it?
Well, our mutual friend Moby, who seems to know everything all the time, she I knew that she was a runner. We had been talking about ultramarathoning because I think I had just finished my first 50K, and when her and I met up, and she loves running, and so she was saying, like, oh, there's this really cool ultra marathon that they're doing. And the more I looked into it, the more intrigued I was because it's a solo run. I mean, I will be out next Saturday running by myself. So it's not a race. But it's more of a celebratory event to really pass the torch on for that entire migration path that goes from Canada all the way to Mexico. And so to me, it's really, I did some fundraising for it. And so I had some people contribute to be able to get into the race and then be able to donate some money to the cause. And I just think it's a great time to promote the hard work that all animals have to do to stay alive. But really running, a 50K physically is challenging, but just thinking that a monarch does that like every single day. So,
yeah. So,
and for them, it's, not that big of a deal.
Yeah. So. It's amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. Yeah.
And just a real quick little slight detour. Is it correct? I read somewhere, I feel like that it's actually successive generations that, like, the generation that begins the migration path in Canada is not the same generation that will wind up at the southern.
That is correct.
Mm-hmm.
That is correct. And so that is why having habitat is so important, because it's not as if the butterfly can fly all the way
Right.
from Mexico north and back. It's
Mm-hmm.
that they have to, along the way, create a new offspring to complete that journey. And so that's why it's so important for there to be milkweed and habitat for them to make that journey, because it's a trek that they take. And I mean, that's the fascinating part of it. Why do they overwinter in Mexico? Why do they go to Canada? Why do they make these stops in between? I mean, it's just a magical mystery.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And I love to think too that in fact, this weekend I was out in my property north of Uvalde, and I just saw tons of monarchs last night just coming through. And so I just thought, well, it's perfect, because pretty soon that's all I'm going to be thinking about while I'm doing this piece of road work. And hopefully I won't see very many on that actual stretch of road, because I don't want them to get hurt by the cars. But they're out there.
Yeah. So which section of the marathon are you going to be running? So how long and when and where, and kind of just the details on that.
Sure. So the race starts in a place called Petersboro, Ontario, and it started in September, and it ends in the Sierra Madre Mountains in Mexico. And so there's two options. You can sign up for a 50-kilometer section, or you can sign up for a 100-kilometer section. And so because I work during the week, I couldn't do the piece that runs through San Antonio, which is where I live. And so the piece that I'm doing is on the 19th. It's next Saturday, and it's the 50K section. It starts in George West, which is just south here, about an hour.
Yeah.
And it runs south along 281. And so I'll leave my house at 4 in the morning, and I'll get there because I'll start running at 6 a.m. And so the way that it works is the two people primarily that are managing the run, they're driving a van. And so it's really fascinating, because they started out in Canada, but they're driving this van all the way down, and the portions where there isn't actually a runner, one of the two of them are running. So they must be running an enormous amount of miles. But so I will start at 6 in the morning, and my hope is to be done by noon. And they meet me every 10 kilometers just to check in, and if I need water or something, they'll have that stuff. And they're also going to be driving my car south to my takeout point, so that I can just leave when I get to the end of it.
Gotcha. So. Okay. And then you said you're going to be mostly kind of passing through rural areas, right? You're not really passing through through many towns?
No, that is true. So the course that I have, what they did was they tried to pick, and they've done this before, they came down and sort of charted the entire course before it started. But it's sort of rural, countryside, kind of off of the main highway. So it's kind of a lot of feeder roads. So it's unusual in the sense that, yes, it's an ultra because it's longer than a marathon, but most ultras are trail racing, and so you're on a non covered surface like asphalt or cement. And so in this case, I will be on cement or asphalt running for the entirety. So it will probably be fairly quick in comparison, and flat. So
yeah. Are there activities planned for those folks that are passing through larger cities or other, even smaller towns? Are there activities that are going on in conjunction with the relay, kind of to draw attention to monarch issues, pollinator issues?
That's a great question. I know that they have some things planned. I don't know specifically outside of San Antonio. I do know on Thursday we should be seeing the runners come through San Antonio. I think there's one woman who's doing the portion here, and I know there are some events that will be going on for the time that she's going to be running through the city. And I think her checkpoint is just north of the city, so I think she runs the entirety of that through San Antonio and just a little bit south. So I think there will be people out holding signs and otherwise supporting. But this does coincide with Monarch Festival that's going on, throughout the month, and we have a lot of activities in town. And I know San Antonio is considered, I don't know, like Monarch City, USA or something. It's, people are very, very committed to awareness and monarch habitat and making sure people are supporting that in their own backyards here in San Antonio. So it's pretty great. I think there's a lot of activities going on, and I'm not sure how tied in the running is to those particular activities.
What are the biggest threats here locally to monarchs and other pollinators, like in South Texas? And then I don't know if you know much about how that might compare across kind of national borders. Like, are they the same issues in Canada versus the U.S. versus Mexico? Does it kind of change with different regions?
Yeah, well, I think the three biggest things that come to mind with that is, for any pollinator, is just habitat loss. We are chewing up so much land for people to have very large houses and to pave things and generally tear down anything that isn't kind of normed as far as, backyard or front yard, plants that look good. And so we've taken away a lot of that habitat. The other two things that come to mind, is just large pesticide use, where people are spraying for things that they find to be, annoying or obnoxious, but really it's detrimental to bees and moths and butterflies, of course. Like, all of those things are very sensitive to any kind of chemical. So there's that. And then I think, just the really robust amount of traffic that's moving through those migration patterns. I mean, you see it with airplanes and birds. You see it with butterflies, and of course, your car is completely covered with, little butterfly carcae when you get home from anything. So, I think it's a combination of so many things that human beings find to be beneficial for them because they have a big house and they don't have to worry about, things getting dusty because they have this paved road and they have these really pretty flowers in their front yard, but nothing feeds off of that. And so I think the thing that I am most interested in and most passionate about, I became a master naturalist a couple of years ago, and I just think it's our responsibility to be stewards of the land and to educate people as much as possible about what can be beneficial, what do birds and butterflies and bats and pollinators eat and live off of, and how can we incorporate that into our lives so that we get good things from it and they can survive. Because I think what I found, especially here in San Antonio, where I've kind of really dug into that, is people just aren't educated, and so they don't know. And once they know, they definitely want to do it. I find that a lot with, doing volunteer work through Master Naturalist is, when you're doing a tree giveaway and people are really fascinated by the fact that things live and eat off of the trees. And it's like, well, of course, but we don't really put those things together. And so I think it's really educating yourself or finding more to be focused on in the natural world that's really going to make that connection and help make it improved. Yeah. But it takes a lot of people, and it takes a lot of effort.
Yeah. So. That was actually going to be my question. Do you think it can the losses from habitat destruction be totally made up for by community education, or do policies around development also have to change? Like, would it be enough if everybody, were planting the right things in their yard, or would we still have to fundamentally change kind of the way society is set up or economies are set up as well?
Well, yeah, and I think this question is really, I feel really passionate about it, so I think it drifts into that area of, could be offensive to some people what my answer is, but I really feel like there's there has to be a mind shift in what is important, and I think that a lot of people these days, what is important is inside of their home, on their phones, in their TV.
Mm-hmm.
They're very insulated and isolated, and I think that has to change. And so with that, yes, there must be policy change. People have to go outside. They need to engage. And I think that what I see really extensively is just that a lot of people have never had positive experiences in nature. They are afraid of things. They are desensitized to the harm that they do. And I think until that's something that is really changed in the mind, it's a real challenge. I think there are a ton of people who are very, very committed to making those changes and being aware and trying to really spread the wealth of knowledge. But I think we have an overarching society that really prioritizes technology and expansive growth and, consumerism. And I think that those are the things that are soulless and they don't mean anything at the end of the day. And that to me is, why I try to do what I do in the variety of communities that I've lived in, just because I think it's important to live by example. And I don't know, to get back to your question of whether it's enough, I think that, I hope that at some point, politics can take a deeper look at what we're going to be left with, and is that going to be enough for ourselves and for our kids. But I also think, there are a lot of communities that are thriving and are trying to make a lot of change. But I think the more we do, the better it's going to be. So hopefully we can get some more politicians behind it. We can get cracking on that because we have to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask too. I know here in South Texas, there's a number of environmental issues over the years that have created these kind of cross-border alliances. Do you know how people here are connecting to the leg of the run that's happening just south of here in Mexico?
That's an interesting question because I don't necessarily know, and I haven't heard much discussion about that. I know that the ascent into the Sierra Madre Mountains, where these butterflies overwinter, is such a sacred place. That is something that, in the community, as we're talking about, who's able to participate in which portion of the run. I know that part of the run is very limited and who actually gets to access that.
Right.
But I think another thing that's really has been heavy on my mind, and this may not answer your question, but it is something I think about, is just, with this impending threat of the border wall being, maximized. I think two things are happening there that are really fatal. One is obviously the destruction of the absolute, in some portions, pristine nature that exists down there that is phenomenal habitat for so many living things that both Mexico and the U.S. benefit from, because it is such a huge part of what we belong to. And I think that once that's gone, that can't come back. The other part of it too is with that physical separation, there just becomes a hardening there, and that is something that I feel like we have to keep. This portion of the United States is a very special place because people are moving across, this man-made border, but it's not a border that has always been there, and it's not something that people are living on both sides of that at all points in all aspects of their lives. And I think it's so important for us to keep that there and to keep that really porous and open, because it keeps us a family and it keeps it close knit. I think once that's not there anymore, it's just like putting a border between habitats. Like, you can't access it, and communities die because of it.
Yeah.
And so those are things that are, really heavy on my mind when I think about that transition.
Yeah.
From north to south.
Yeah. I'm wondering if have there been any efforts to sort of link up with just the activity that has happened to protect like the Santa Ana wildlife refuge, because I know that has, a huge number of butterfly species there that are protected.
Yes.
Are y'all connecting with that as you pass through, or is that part of the journey as well?
I don't know. I should definitely hope so, that there is some connection there. I because my portion is so limited further north, I don't know as much about what that prospective area is going to look like for the runners, and I'm not sure who's running that portion, but I would certainly hope that would be something that would be of utmost importance to really have outreach there and make those efforts, because that is exactly what, I just think we have to, that has to remain. We have to continue having that habitat and those species, because it's just absolutely essential to everything that we do here.
Right.
Everything.
Right.
So.
Do you think there's something about a species that migrates, whether it's butterflies or birds, that has the ability, more than other species maybe even, to create peace or understanding across borders?
That's such an interesting question, and I think absolutely, because, Texas has more migrating birds than anywhere else in the world. They come through here.
Yeah.
I think one of the things I've always, when I was a school teacher and I taught science, I think one of the things that can be used as a metaphor is, migrating birds are such a miracle, and sometimes there's such a rare sighting. It's such an exciting thing to see a bird that is unusual or is rarely seen coming through and, using the nature that is around you. And I think we have, as a people, become so stuck in a particular mindset about any type of person moving through another environment. And instead of being inquisitive or seeking to understand or trying to, build that bridge and see it as something of beauty and be giving, it's turned into something different. But I do think that that's there. And I think where that starts is really with kids. I think the more you can get children engaged in recognizing that where you are and what you have to give is a really fantastic thing, especially when something is traveling through or you have something to share. It's like, oh, this is such an unusual species. I would love to know more about the way that it functions and what it eats and how it uses the habitat. And so using that inquisitive nature, I think once we lose that, we've really lost a lot of living, because you're just not living as fully as you probably could. So I think for me, migrating species, I love birds. I love bird watching. And right now, there's huge kettles of hawks coming through Texas. These things are just magical. And I think that, like I was saying before, if we aren't connected to that in a really, a spiritual way, it's something that is really a miracle and somewhat not understood.
Right.
So we can really be part of that process. We're really missing out on something, and I think that's really unfortunate.
Yeah.
And in some ways, I don't know how long that's going to last. And so I just every chance I get, those are things that I really encourage anyone around me to just see and engage in, because it's important.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I'm interested, kind of that, even though, I was reading through the press release for the event, and it's, even though the aim of the run is to draw attention to threats facing monarchs and other pollinators, it's really, I was struck that it's framed as a celebration of resiliency and labor. And I think you even talked about kind of like the invisible work, right, that these species do over generations to make this journey across countries. Can you talk a little bit more about what that idea of resiliency that is important to the run means to you? And I guess whether you think that like, whether that's important, right, in the way that we do this kind of work, whether environmental work, or the work of environmental justice, does it matter if we think of it in terms of resiliency and celebration of what is beautiful or what is miraculous versus sort of cataloging the harms or cataloging the threats or the losses, right? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I think that's. I mean, I know you are a poet as well. I think as poets, that is something to think about a lot, because you have this sort of dichotomy between, writing or thinking about what is beautiful and miraculous versus something that is really a threat. And I always think of Mary Oliver when I think about those types of things. Like, do you record what you see as fantastic and beautiful and you want to stay, or are you recording something else? I think that this is a really interesting question, because I think as a runner, one of the things that I consider when I'm doing these longer races is the resilience of the human body to even be able to do it. Yeah. Because running to me in general it's not very physical. I mean, you're using your body, and it can be challenging, but it's really a mental effort to push yourself on and to really do something more than you thought you could. And so I guess if I think about this, celebration of resiliency and how nature perseveres regardless, I think there is a place for that, and I feel really honored that I'm able to do this run, both because I physically can, and also because it's something that's very important to me. And I think that it again helps to have those conversations around what we love, like what is out there. People love butterflies. They don't know a lot about them. Like, let's talk more about why they're at such risk. But I think the other piece of that question is, again, I think in this time, it is so difficult to not keep tally of either the work that we are doing or the work that we're not doing. And so I think that that's the other part of it is, it is really hard for me to see any event like this is just a celebration of resiliency, because yes, the monarchs are continuing to return in much, much fewer numbers. Yeah. Their habitat in Mexico is much diminished. People care very little about whether they survive or not, because I think a lot of people don't think that they directly impact their world. And so those to me are things that it sort of burns very bright in that aspect. I really want people to see it for what it is. But I guess that kind of is both parts, right? Because you do have to talk about what you want to have remain and stay and be here to be part of that. But I think that's a really challenging question, and I think about it a lot, because what part of that do you focus on?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it's sort of one of the animating questions for Deceleration, like as people that for Greg as a journalist, for myself as an activist, not so much in the aspect of my work as a writer, but definitely as an activist, like if you only ground your work in kind of the tallying of the mounting disasters, you burn out. Or so there has to be kind of both. There has to be this movement, this tension that you hold between counting and compiling losses, and then at the same time celebrating resiliency or celebrating sort of what remains. And I just found that really interesting when I read the press release. And just a kind of final question: how can folks who are living in South Texas, or even not beyond South Texas, all over the continent, how can they support what you are doing, or themselves get involved?
Well, I think for the Monarch Ultra, I mean, if people want to know more about that, there's a website, and it's just themonarchultra.com. And Clay Williams is the run director out of Ontario, and he he is very reachable. So if people want to find out more, you know, he of course will get back to you if they connect with him. But, you know, coming out to see runners, I think it's maybe more challenging than a regular race just because it's a solo person running. I think the bigger picture for me is just awareness and getting involved local in, you know, native plants, get to know your native plants, get to know what uses your native plants, and then try to make a connection with people around you, your neighborhoods, your, you know, local gardening centers, so that there can be ways to supply what animals actually feed off of and what they have as host plants that could be beneficial for yourself, for your neighbors, for these community gardens that you might have, and otherwise just supporting, you know, the park system as well. Because there's a lot of great people working to make sure that we have native plants and trees in the parks, and that they're really well maintained and kept. And I just think it's a consciousness, you know, just if it's important to you, you have to work to find out more about it. And sometimes that's a lot of work, but sometimes it leads to, which in my case it definitely did, leads to an amazing group of people, you included, who really see the world in a way that I want to be surrounded with people who are also seeing the world that way. And so I think it's just really important to start down that path if it's of interest, and if you're already in that, to just keep pushing, because, you know, hopefully at some point we can start to make a shift that's really going to make things better.
Well, definitely, I thank you for your work, Liberty, and all the spheres that you operate in. Yeah, I'm so happy to be able to amplify and broadcast what you're doing and what all the other runners are doing. So thank you very much. Yeah.